Citizen Science. Naomi Kanakia. Reading time, 22 minutes. Naomi Kanakia has published stories in Asimov's, F&SF, and others. She has books forthcoming from Harper Teen, Feminist Press, and Princeton University Press. One time, I met a girl at a San Francisco party who was in vaccine research, and she did that thing city people do when they meet someone from the exurbs, where they get cagey and start to be self-deprecating about their work. Oh, it's boring stuff, really rote. I'm just at a local county hospital. Oh, which one? The General? So that's UCSF, isn't it? Technically. Well, then isn't that like one of the most prestigious research centers in the country? I guess, but we've really lost ground lately. It's so hard to hire people who want to live in SF at the salaries we pay. You could hire me. I'd kill to work there. I smiled as I said it, putting on a really eager and earnest face, the way my immigrant mom would have loved. The girl immediately got flustered and confused. I asked for her email, offered to send her my resume, was like, oh God, if it's so hard, I'd be happy to help you out. She didn't get that I was joking. Most suburbanites, at least of my generation, wouldn't have been able to make this joke. They believed the hype that there was a pipeline problem, that we had a STEM shortage. But I was a D-classed person. Although I made $20,000 a year, my parents had been college professors, so I knew the score. I didn't have a PhD or a science degree, and although I had thousands of citations on CitSci, that didn't matter. You're interested in viral immunology? She said. We were at a housewarming in some narrow basement apartment in San Francisco. A friend from high school had spammed out invitations, and I'd been like, sure, I don't have anything to do. The friend was a med student. His parents had been doctors, of course. But whatever. My parents were professors. So who am I to judge? Yeah, I'm an immunologist myself. I've done a bunch of protein modeling. Oh, she said, that's what my lab does. She then frowned, and she gave me this subtle questioning that city people do when they're trying to size you up. Get your credentials. Are you in a lab, or... I've worked with labs, but no, I'm not in one, technically. She frowned. Oh, that sounds interesting. What labs, do you mind me asking? When I told her the name, she blinked rapidly. She wasn't white, though this story would be better if she was. She was Asian, but Vietnamese, so maybe the child or grandchild of refugees. Unlike my parents, who were high-caste Hindus in India. Like I said, I'm D-classed. If my luck had been slightly different 10 years ago, I could have been a city person. We were against a wall, and I turned outward, giving her a chance to escape. I don't want to keep you, I said. I'm sorry, she said. It's just... That's my PI. You worked with him? I still do, I said. Or at least I work on the same things. But... I'm sorry, what's your name again? And where do you work? This is just so exciting. Everyone here is a doctor. There are no scientists. I want to know everything. We should talk science. I work at the Berkeley Public Library. I can't even afford to live in Berkeley, and I'm half-time at the library. That's how I get journal access. Do they have an immunology lab, or... Nope, I said. I'm a citizen scientist. Oh, she said. Her eyes immediately swept over the crowd. Mystery solved. Person disposed of. Then she caught my eye again, her long lashes fluttering, and she beamed me a big smile. That's so exciting. Citizen science is really cool. It's led to some actual advancements. Totally, I said. I came up with some of them. I invented the javelin technique. She tittered. That's what I work on. That's what made my PI famous. This is so strange to meet you here. I never meet anyone who understands my work. But although the words came out, her eyes were still scanning the crowd, and I knew that if I offered her an escape again, she would likely take it. I know, I said. I invented it. I mean, someone else would have if I hadn't, but I'm the one who actually did. I stayed up nights for years, figuring out the protein combinations. I knew the words I was saying marked me out in her eyes as someone who didn't know their business. On SitSci, we use different lingo for a lot of the same things, and ideally I'd know all the words to translate everything into her language. That's how people, a very few people, made the jump from SitSci into traditional academia. But I didn't know the words. I didn't have a PhD. I was self-taught. I'd learned everything online, through SitSci portals. It was like I'd learned an entire alternative science, like the Aryan physics that the Nazis had tried to create. Except it was the same science. We just talked about it differently. No, it was more like we were using the Newtonian notation for calculus, while the rest of the world had moved on to Leibniz's. We might seem backward, but our science still worked. It's okay, I said. You don't believe me, that's fine. But look me up online. I have a bunch of awards, a Kevin Slack fellowship too. That's how I can only work half-time. Huh, she said. No, I don't mean to doubt you. I'm sure you do great work. I do, I said. I do better work than your PI does. He might have stolen my idea. He might not. I don't know. But it doesn't matter. I came up with it first, years earlier. If I had $5 million, I could have built the Corvax years ago. Look, I'm sorry, she said. You're getting heated. I feel like I'm not saying the right thing. Maybe we should... You don't have to believe me, I said. I don't expect you to. The truth exists. I am smarter than your PI. I came up with his signature achievement before he did. And I did it without a lab, without a degree, working half-time. But it's okay. I've got my community, and they recognize me. Lots of us come up with stuff, and it doesn't get validated by academic science the way the Javelin technique was. I mean, we don't even trust ourselves. Hey, she said. I've been patient with you, but don't bully me. I'm sorry I'm not validating your ego. You don't have to. I mean, it would be nice. Maybe we should part. Maybe we should. She stood her ground, and I turned away, going for another drink. A few minutes later, I heard her speaking hurriedly to two friends of hers, and I saw them on their phones. Heard my name. My face went red, and I left. That night, I logged onto the girl's social media feed. I wanted to read her paper, wanted to see if I could somehow understand it. I knew that the words might be different, but we worked on the same thing. Incomprehensible as it might seem to her, our differences were only a matter of style and jargon. But I saw a post entitled, "Citizen Science is Out of Control." She described being cornered at a party by a menacing individual who insisted that they had originally invented her PI's primary invention. When she Googled this individual later on, she found herself in a dark underworld of science that wasn't peer-reviewed, not a reputable PhD in sight, where people conducted irresponsible, incomprehensible experiments and then tried, post facto, to insist that they had originally proved the same things reputable scientists did. She had read the paper, which had indeed been published 5 years ago, where this individual claimed to have invented a new technique for inducing immune responses in human beings, and she'd found it to be severely deficient. She went point by point through the paper, describing the ways in which this paper had fallen short, the poor assumptions and mistakes, the lack of robustness checks. And she said, essentially, this person invented the Javelin technique in the same way that Voltaire invented the spaceship. He might have had the idea for a ship that could fly through space, but that's nothing. What matters is putting in the work to prove it. My first reaction was anger, obviously. I wrote and deleted some really terrible vitriolic comments. Every time I looked at the post, it had been shared more times. I gritted my teeth, knowing what was coming next. I wanted to email the girl and be like, "Sorry for the shitstorm. It's not my fault." Because, of course, the sit-sci boards took up the post. Like I said, I'm kind of a celebrity. And we also have kind of an inferiority complex when it comes to academic science. They combed through her whole posting history and background and were like, "Can you believe this total nothing thinks she's better than basically the James Watson of our time?" I'm not a James Watson, obviously, and I had little ability to evaluate her work. I thought of posting telling people to lay off, but realized that would only supercharge the vendetta. However, when people texted or emailed me the article, I told them to back off. The affair got taken up by mainstream commentators, who were almost universally on her side. They took it for granted that her analysis of my work was right. And I got extremely depressed, thinking, well, I don't know, maybe I am just deluded. I read and reread her analysis, thinking, was I actually stupid? But I had done things. I had played around with those shapes for years, and when I got the idea for how to fit them together just right, I remember being astonished by how simple it was. I'd searched and searched, dead certain someone else must have thought it up first. I posted on a sit-sci forum thinking, this can't be real. I got flamed pretty hard at first, but eventually people searched and searched, and we realized I'd genuinely solved something. That was real. Or maybe it wasn't. It's so frustrating. In my community, it was a total article of faith that I'd invented this vital thing. But in her community, everyone, and I mean everyone, was certain I was a deluded idiot. The paradigms were incompatible. Yes, I've read The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, obviously. Every sit scientist has. But then I woke up one day with this insane idea. Like, truly nuts. I was like, holy shit. What if... Holy shit! I went back to her original post, and I really read her analysis. She had given me the Rosetta Stone. She was an academic scientist who'd paid attention to what I had written. She had worked her best to translate everything into her language and analyze it. And if you looked into the hints, the interstices of her statement, you could see it. She had seen something. Maybe I wasn't a genius, but she had seen something. I read her analysis 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. Then I called up a few prominent viral immunologists, pretending to be a journalist, trying to clear up some of the confusion. Then I did something bizarre. I sat down, and over the course of 6 months, I rewrote my big paper using academic science terms. I did it as an exercise, and I'm sure the results were terrible. I went back to the immunologists and, still pretending to be a journalist, asked them to evaluate it, saying I'd written it as an exercise. I was an academic scientist trying to figure out if citizen science had any depth at all. During this time, I tried to carry on my own work, and I tried to do it in academic science terms, thinking maybe I could write something that an academic journal would publish. But it was impossible. The thing is, we use our own tools. We have our own journals. Everything is set up using the way we think about things. And science is so collaborative. All of my collaborators were offended by what I was saying about citizen science and academic science, and they gave it zero shrift. So my brain almost cracked, trying to work under one paradigm while I translated my old work into the other paradigm. But at the end of 2 years, I had a competent translation of my old work. I couldn't do anything with it, of course. I presented it to a journal, and they came back saying it offered nothing new to the field, but it had clearly been comprehensible to them. Then, while looking through my social media feeds, I happened to find my high school friend congratulating his friend on her new job. It was the girl from the party. She was a program officer now for a big foundation, which is just another way of saying she'd washed out of academia. She wasn't a bench scientist anymore. Well, I debated back and forth about what to do. In case you haven't guessed, I'm somewhat solitary. My only friends are citizen scientists, and they tend to be an angry, unhappy lot. And although the girl knew I wasn't a man, something about the interaction between us, and the later shitstorm, had taken on a gendered quality. I'd seen in her subsequent posts that she felt very threatened by the anger from all these male citizen scientists, and although she had clarified, a few times, that the individual who'd started off the discussion wasn't a man, they were some kind of genderqueer person, I'm a trans woman actually, they had clearly experienced my presence as male. And I know from being a woman-type person on the internet that getting a random email from a male-type person, particularly one with whom you've had a bad history, can be scary. She'd probably ignore my message, or worse, tear it apart online. I thought, fuck her, I don't need her validation. But at the same time, I had spent so much time with her writing. I'd read all her papers, and I even understood them. I'd read the series of posts where she dissected other sit-sci papers, and I'd glowed every time she said, "This is even worse than the first one. At least the first person understood something about real science." For the past 2 years, I had lived with this girl in my head. Every time I worked, every time I wrote, I had thought, what would she think of it? Would she approve? Would this make her feel understood and safe? And I knew these feelings were creepy and wrong, and if I'd had any friends or any family to confide in, I know they'd have said, leave her alone. I wrote a few drafts of the email, but I never sent them. I am very familiar with the horror of dropping heartfelt messages into the void and never knowing if they landed on solid ground. So, I decided upon the ultimate in no-nos. I waited until the party my friend threw for his med school graduation. Then I ostentatiously marked myself not attending. After several days, I saw she had indicated she would attend. My friend looked panicked when I arrived, about an hour into the party. I waved him a perfunctory hello, and then I looked for the girl. I spotted her in the corner, and I walked towards her, my heart pumping quickly. "You were right," I said. "Mostly right." "Oh," she said. "Hello." She was in a spring dress, and her hair was bound into a high ponytail. She struggled with acne, but it gave her face character, I thought, and I liked its cratered surface and the patterns the pimples made along the curve of her jaw. "Yeah, just wanted to say," I said. "I thought a lot of your criticisms were fair. I was sorry your advisor didn't back you up publicly." "Oh, yeah, well, he was a dick," she said. "Actually, oh, fine, I don't work for him anymore. He definitely knew your name. Like, before I'd written the article, he'd already heard of you. He called me during the controversy and was like, 'How do you know this person? You shouldn't ever talk about them again.' And I basically realized that, like, yeah, he had read your paper before writing his." My eyes went wide. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm sorry. I should have gone public. But it was just hearsay. And, you know, that was a tough year for me, with all the controversy. I am so sorry. I kept meaning to email you." "Don't worry about it," I said. "I mean, this is the greatest day of my life, obviously. But don't worry about it. And don't worry about him. Can you imagine how sad it is to live a lie like that? I'm pretty sure he thinks he invented everything. He is so arrogant." Well, that's sad. His life is sad. Your work is good, and you did it yourself. He didn't think so. Hey, I said, I read your takedown of my paper, and I had a few questions. Do you mind if we talk science? She looked at me, and then at her friends. One of them gave her a beseeching look, and she gave them a little wave. Sure. We went to a couch and we sat near each other, our knees almost touching. And when I pulled out a printout from my purse, she said, "Oh my God, you came prepared." I put the two papers side by side, my original and the rewritten one. She glanced at them, and then she punched me in the shoulder. You are so absurd. Okay, we can't do this here. Give me these. Let's meet in an hour. You sure? Totally, she said. This is insane. Okay, wait. She had a few questions about the papers, and we never actually parted for that hour, because the questions kept coming. We left the house party and went to dinner. Then she invited me to her house and shyly showed me some of her explorations of citizen science portals, and I explained to her some of the shibboleths and taboos that were at play here. She laughed, and I laughed, and we agreed to collaborate on a project. Within a few months, our scientific interests had diverged, but by then I had admitted to myself that I was in love. This time I did write an email, which touched repeatedly on her intellectual honesty and moral courage, that sort of thing. And within moments of sending the email, she called me and said, "I'm at work, and I'm crying." Her advisor won the Nobel Prize 20 years later. My wife was outraged on my behalf, but I quoted to her extracts from her takedown of my paper until she threw a banana at me and was like, "Okay, fine. I suppose you didn't deserve it either."